Hello artists, welcome to week 4. I cannot believe how well you're doing, and I think that you did so amazingly well on the 1-point perspective that I think you're ready to try something a little more with the perspective. This time we're going to go on a road trip. And I always like to mix up things at the end, the last session of my workshops, just to give a little more spice or more fun or just something outside the box. And this one we're going to look at a couple of artists that actually do landscapes, taking you on a journey. And this time we're going to change our orientation. A lot of us have been working in the format of landscape, as meaning that you take your paper and you actually are putting it this way rather than this way. So everyone's going to work portrait this time. And we're going to take our road through the journey, and as we go from the bottom all the way through to the top of the page, our architecture, our houses, our castles, whatever you want them to be, are going to get really small the further they get away. So this is going to help us work with scale, help us kind of get over the timidity of working tiny, and maybe it's time that you put away that wash brush that you're using so much and really try to use your smallest brush. So with that in mind, I'm excited. Let's get started. Yay! Okay, so what I wanted to discuss with you today is how to take your art on a journey through a countryside. And I did a quick sketch, I probably spent about an hour sketching out my thought process and how I wanted to go forward. So I pulled from a couple of my designs previously in the workshop. I do have the barn back in the background from week 2, and then from last week I'm pulling from it the red barn and that 1-point perspective, and here's another one I threw in. And you could borrow from the sheet of different barns if you want, and those could be your models as you put in some small pieces of art. So I'm really excited about this. My road's going to start out really wide, and as I meander through, it's going to get really tiny to that single point. These will be all of the fields, and I think it's going to be fun to look at Paul Klee's work and be able to establish sections, if you know, in the cubist style. Like we'll have these just packed pockets, and we'll be able to create some really cool architecture and agriculture fields. So let's get started. Obviously I sketched this landscape style, but I'm going to be putting it onto my paper portrait. So I want you to all work in portrait. So I have taped it down in this direction. Do not be tempted to turn it this way. I want to see how well we can do this in the portrait orientation. Here's a cute little postcard that I picked up somewhere along the way. But look at the miniature of just this little cathedral or little mission church. And again, here's a little road that gets wide, and then it gets tiny as you go back behind this church edifice. So let's try to work kind of, not that we're trying to make little mini or miniature paintings, but we're focusing on how things are big in front and how they get smaller further away. I think you'll find that it'll be interesting to just limit yourself to working with your number 6 and your rigger. Maybe you'll have your wash brush, but you might be using some scratching as well, and less on using your big wash brush. So let's get started by sketching onto the paper. And I have a pencil here, and I'm going to draw lightly, even though it might look darker, or I might have to press darker just for you all in the videotape. So I'm going to establish my where I want my buildings first. So if this is front of barn number 1, you can refer to your your barns from what you did previously. And just make it a very simple sketch. Like here's one I just did in pen. And this one I studied looking at the reverse, because maybe I want the front and then just have this little barn here. I kind of like, I think I'm liking this one better, where the long side is over here to a point. You could do castles, you could do all barns, all houses, country houses if you want. You could find yourself 3 little houses that live in the neighborhood together. There's like a barn door here. Maybe this is where the hay comes out up here over the top. Try not to get too detailed. Obviously, you're going to be working smaller, so you don't need to draw every little nook and cranny. Okay, so there might be barn number 1. Okay, maybe barn number 2. Yours could be cottage number 2, whatever you decide. But this one, if this is Papa barn, the next one's going to be Mama barn, so it's going to be a little bit smaller, right? So in this case, I'm going to make it smaller. We'll do the front of the barn. I'm just sketching it onto here. It's going to go to a 1 point in this direction now. It's going to be kind of that half an octagon feeling. Could be all the same farm, right? This is just another barn on the property. Maybe this is where they keep the horses. These little windows are going to go to a point way out here, so they need to line up. But the more you do this, the more you're going to be able to eyeball it, and you won't have to draw the point every time. So I've got a bigger one, a medium, and then I'm going to have a tiny one. This is maybe where the people live, right? Maybe they live way out here in the countryside, so you could take your cottage that you drew, and maybe that's the model that you use for this particular scene. So we'll have 3 edifices, but we'll go from large, medium to small. The more you draw architecture too, you'll be able to just pull from your memory bank and make up your own cute little house. Maybe there's a side wall here. There could be a front door here. And a nice big picture window. I know what your house wants to look like. Maybe this is a carport out front. Just a little. You could have some trees and things that you add to it. Maybe it has a big circular drive out in front. So maybe look for 3 different inspirations to put into your piece. If you don't want to use the ones that you have used before. Okay, now that I've got the 3 locations set, I'm actually going to make the drive or the road. So I'm going to start wide down here. I'm going to make the first snaky road, and then I'm going to make a parallel one. So I want to end up at some point on the horizon way up here. So I'm just going to take this road and wind it through. Maybe it goes off the page here and comes back in the page. and ends up down at that point. Now I'm going to go wide here, and it's going to get narrower the further away I go. It's going to get closer. Alright, so that looks kind of fun. Alright, so this is obviously going to be my horizon line where the point ends. And your horizon line could be hilly. There could be lots of hills and mountains in your background. The Rockies or the Estrellas or the white tanks. Okay, you could even have a few clouds put into your piece. Alright, now I need to connect this drive to this road here somehow. Okay, and I need to somehow connect this. Could be that it's a couple of things going on there. Alright, and then the rest of the area I'm going to throw in my fields. There's a famous artist too, his name was David Hockney, and he did landscapes in England, and I think that's going to be fun for us to study his work this week. So what we're going to do is create some fields and patterns just to break up these areas. So up front, I'm going to have some pretty large areas. But then as I get closer to the horizon line, my fields get a little closer together. They're not going to any point. When you're doing agriculture, it's not necessarily any rhythm or pattern to it, depending on who owns the field and what you're growing. But look how shallow the depth is here compared to here. So they're only a 1/4 inch wide back here, but they're 2 inches out here in the front. Okay, and so then I'm going to have opportunities to either put fields of flowers or different types of grasses and break up this whole landscape. This is going to be fun because while we're still using the same 4 colors, I'm going to encourage you to either pick a warm or a cool palette. So this could be all like in the greens, which is kind of right in the middle of warm and cool, but wouldn't it be cool if this was all really done with the green colors? Or what if you wanted to create mostly blues and purples out of this? Or maybe you want to do it very warm with reds and yellows and oranges. So I think this is going to be really fun to stick to one side of the color wheel with your particular journey of your one-point perspective down a winding hill and road. Alright, so let's get busy. I'm going to go ahead and use some masking. I might want to lighten up a little bit of my edifice. I'm just going to rub my kneadable eraser over the whole thing just to lighten it up a little bit. So maybe I want to have one white cloud up in the sky. I don't think I need to worry with, well, I think I might actually mask my road so I can work on the fields and maybe keep the road really light, especially toward the horizon. Don't be afraid to use your masking in really unique ways. I mean, what if I just used it for the fields somehow? What if it's like some kind of rock or gravel in the road? What if it is the details on the barn that stay white? Maybe just the edge of the top of the barn so I don't get my field in my roof line. Okay, and my Mr. Sun is going to be shining down across the page. If you have any vegetation, you could block that out. How that ever's gonna look. Alright, so I'm gonna let that dry and then I'm gonna come back and start doing all of the sky and the fields. Alright, so my masking is all dry and I'm ready to start painting. And remember I said I was gonna try to just do an overall warm theme on this piece. So I'm gonna kind of do a little sunset sky. I've got some palette colors left over from last week. I'm just going to use that. I'm going to try to keep the sky pretty light. Oh, that's kind of dark to begin with. So you quickly take a towel and lighten that up. And it's nice if you can kind of keep your sky lighter. You can always come back later and add more to it. I'm finding that we get a little dark on the sky to begin with, and you can always add some back in. Okay, now I'm just going to put in a little bit of the blue with the gamboge because I want to make it a little more like a greeny yellow. Bit darker toward the outer space. Just to be kind of fun. Then I'm going to get lighter or closer to the mountains. Let's see what happens here. Maybe I'll just do some red mountains. I'll have to do a couple of layers. I could put a little sienna in it right now, but I want to kind of keep it light right now. Okay, now I'm going to start painting on my fields, my little patchwork fields. So we want to keep things bolder toward the front and very light and airy toward the back, and not so bold. So it's going to be kind of watered down. Each one of these fields is going to be a little bit different. You could leave little white patches in there too, right, that you didn't mask. can paint right up to the line. Just being a little different. See what happens when we go a little bit different. It's fun to kind of see what happens when we try to go with one colorway and change the orientation of our paper and work from big to small. Mix it up a little bit. Okay, I need to get some kind of some orangier ones in here. I can come back and add trees and bushes and everything between all the fields, so that can come later. Kind of looks like I got dead fields, right? Like it's fall and everything's already been harvested. Not this field. It's getting bolder as I get toward the front. Kind of mixing it up, like making like a little patchwork here. Get too dark too fast. I can always add more. So right now I'm using my 1/2 inch. I'm not using my wash brush. It's really working well because I can get into a point with the flat brush. All right, how about just a little more pinky red? I have no idea how this is going to turn out. I'm working from a sketch from all of my barns that I previously did, so we don't even know how. That's kind of the mystery behind it. Do I want to have some more interesting little things in here? Maybe I do. Like some patterning. Let that dry. And the more you draw, the more you sketch, the more you observe buildings and architecture to be able to pull from your imagination. It's really important to observe. Let's see. Orange here. I just put masking there, so I'm not going to be able to put much there. maybe a little bit warmer green right in here. Greens can, go to the cool or to the warm, depending on how much yellow versus how much blue. Alright, I'm going to let these rest dry before I add more. Alright, so we're back and I have all of the masking dried and most of the fields put on with the first layer. And I'm really excited about this because we can start adding more layers and then we can get into the actual structures themselves. From your week 2, you had a printout or an attachment on the slides that had different barn types. And I can actually use these too in addition to the artwork that I did in weeks 1 and 2 and 3 to help me with what all these little things are. Remember, we're not going to try to get into the nitty-gritty, but it might be really fun to be able to look at key elements that we can highlight when you're looking at something in the far distance. What's going to stand out the most. So anyway, this was my barn from week 2, and it could be that this becomes part of my house inspiration. So I'm just going to be pulling from a couple of different things to add to this whole composition, because it is a composition. We're going from the really large to the really small, and there's my 1 point. I have a couple of more fields over here on the left to fill in, so I really want to do that. And then start to add a little color to my buildings before I do another wash over the whole landscape. Okay, so let's see, how about, I want to keep these really light and airy, and they have gotten bolder, see, as you come down here. And I'm working with a warm palette. You might have chose a cool palette, so maybe you have purples and blues with some green. I chose the warm. I don't know, I'm just kind of feeling like maybe this is the end of the summer, it's warm, and my edifices are going to take on a warm color as well. Okay, so let's see, how about I make this one with just a little bit of red in it. All these different colors you can make with just the 4 that we have. If you're taking my class for the fall, and we're going to be doing more fall still lifes with fall harvest and florals, we're going to be using different colors than these. You will have 6 next time, and they're much more bold and bright. And you're thinking, oh good, right? You're probably just tired of these. But these make good landscapes. Okay, so now I've gotten something on everything. Something in the far distance up here. I like how it can make little puddles toward the corners to give me some more definition in these rolling hills. Okay, I'm gonna go back down here now to barn, we'll just call it barn number 1, the largest one of them all. Let's see, I think I'm going to decide that my Mr. Sun is going to be coming from the right, so that means everything on the left will be just a tad bit darker. So that's what I'm going to work on. what do I want these buildings to be? Well, I had brown in this one. I did a red barn before. Those are both very warm. I think I want the one in the front to be very bold. I'm gonna stick with my 1/2 inch Aquel brush. Okay, so when you're working small like this, having 1 or 2 brush strokes. This side's going to be darker over here. I'm painting in the direction that the structure was built. And that just adds to my beaded board, right? And I'm going to save that little white strip because maybe that's trim work. This might be trim work too, right above the door. And this might be, I'm going to save the eaves. It's okay that I got a little green in the top of my roof here. We'll just add to the whole thing. Okay. Maybe I'll kind of model it after this one over here a little bit, just a little bit. Okay, so now I'm going to do some brown, some sienna brown, if I have any left in one of these trays. I have multiple trays over here for each of the sessions. And I'm just going to use them all up right now, because why not? Ooh, I kind of really like that. That's kind of got that. It has the new gamboge, the crimson, and the sienna all in there. And it's really bold. I think it needs to be a tad darker, so I'm going to add some blue to it. Some of you were having trouble making your dark brown. Just have to know to keep adding some blue to it if it's not dark enough. Try to avoid using black because it is opaque and it will take over your whole drawing and you can't get rid of it. Okay, so I put that, and it's going to get another coat, so it's going to get even darker on that spot right there. Alright, now I think I'm going to take this same color and just go over the red to change up the red on the dark side. I'm painting in the direction the beaded boards would go. And then this little guy here, my brush is a little too big, so I'm going to switch to my 6. And make it even darker. You should be able to squint and tell if your values are different enough. Like that this is different from all of that. Okay, I'm going to also use that same warm dark brown in this opening of the barn. This is the first thing you see when you come on this property. The house is way back here, so I'm just kind of making this composition up. Maybe this is the farmland, and we're going up to the house, and this is the first thing you see. Put a little bit of that brown in the end, and I'm going to paint wet on wet. Just put a little bit of that dark brown right now under the eaves. I am barely touching it. When you're working this small, barely touching it. And I'm just going to let this dry before I do anything else. Let me just do a little outline here. Working in small slows you down a bit, makes you look at something in a different way. I told you I wanted to mix it up a little bit on my 4th lesson. Okay, I don't have any greenery yet, not worrying about that right at this point. All right, let's go to this one. So it won't be as bold as this one. It's a little bit further away. This is definitely the Red Barn Farm. So it's going to look not as bold just because I'm not going to do as many surfaces all in red or in color. This is going to be the lighter side in value. Maybe it's really white, so I'm just going to kind of dirty it up a little bit. And this is going to be a rusty metal roof, so I am going to make up a warm violet beigey because it's just going to be a silver tin roof up there. Catch it because it was going in my field. Okay, now way up here I really can't see what's going on, can I? But I can treat the inside of these windows dark and leave the house and all of the roof kind of light and airy. And a window here and there. A picture window here. My front door doesn't have to be dark. I could keep that lighter. Some kind of turnaround circular drive here. All right, now go back to my fields and start muddying them up, for lack of better words. They are a bunch of mud. Okay, so I'm taking my 6 brush. Now, I think I want to make patterns in the hills. I was talking to you last about David Hockney's work, and you can put, you know, dashes and dots and swirls and things into your fields. So I think that might be kind of fun. So this one I'm just going to paint some rows or stripes. You might have a little mansion back there, a castle back there. Okay, so there's a field. Maybe over in this one. Maybe this is where strawberries grow. Cranberry field. Okay, I'm gonna get to using opposites here in a minute. This is gonna be kind of a swirly path in here. Use your imagination. Where I live, we have tons of rows of rose farms that make your roses. It's really fun to look at. Okay, so maybe in this one, it's just little dibbles and dabs. These are really close to the road, so I'm getting them in the foreground. Alright, and so now we're going to think about the road itself. Do I want to keep that light so that your eye just kind of travels through the whole thing? But I could dirty up the edges. Like there's a little grass along the way. And every so often just kind of drag it across. Okay, if you're mixing some of that green on top of something else, by sticking with the same 4 colors, you're definitely going to keep it all within the family, so to speak. It's not going to, it'll all go together. You'll have the same DNA, right? Oops, I got something up here in the sky from the bottom of my palette. Don't put your palette right on top of your artwork. I'm trying to get everything in the frame of the camera look what happened. So I just have to go over it a little bit. Okay. Alright, I'm going to do something, I started with these little masking dots in here. Maybe I'm going to go the opposite of red and use green. A warm green. Because remember, I'm trying to stick to warm. They'd be smaller back here, but they would be much bigger up here. Maybe this is a lettuce crop growing here. Dirty up the road right next to the house here with some yellow. And I want it to be more muted back here. My second coat on. Can't wait to see what your countryside or your cityscape, maybe you're in the city and this is just a straight road with several buildings along the road. All right. I am going to be mixing up the opposite of the red, which is green, to make the beaded boards. I'm going to wait till that dries, and then I'll do that. I could do a little bit on this one because this one's already dry, and I'm not going to be making that any darker in the red. So let's just try that. Now you could try your rigger brush at this point. You could also scratch it in. Don't hardly have any water on there, just the pigment. And this is going to be the darker side of the barn. This is the lighter side. So I'm going to see more of the detail on the darker side. The other side will be more washed out. This is that. I'm mixing all the colors together, and I'm just going to make the little cross on the door. This would be like the shadow. And that's where this rigger brush can really come in handy. We haven't used it much. I am kind of clamping down on it near the metal part. Right there under the eave. I love that it's going right over the red and making a really good deep shadow under those eaves. It's going to my point way out there. So my windows are slanted. I need those inside of those windows to actually be darker. So I'm going to use this gray that I mixed up. But I don't want them to be... So if the sun's hitting this side, these windows are going to be more in light, have a lighter value. Okay. Let's just add a little more yellow to the red. Pop that up a little more so it doesn't too dull. It makes it a little more orangey, more interesting. You'll know if you keep trying to use your rigger out in some other area that's bolder and needs a little bit more color that you should probably switch back to your 6 because it'll take you forever to work on that area. I'm going to give these doors just to dirty them up a little bit. Okay, let's switch back to the rigger. See, I'm going to be coming back and forth working on this. Now in my sketch, I do have like an evergreen type tree that I thought would be fun back there. I could add this right now, but I think I still don't know what this field is going to be yet, so I'll work on the field first. And the opposite of orange is kind of a blue. Maybe we have blueberries. No, maybe it's kale back there. I don't know. So in this case, made kind of a bluey green. And I'm going to go in this direction. Go different way. See, this way I went slanted down. This way I'm going to slant up. I wanted to get this on before I do that evergreen tree. Oh, the farmer went a little crooked. That's okay. Okay, maybe in this area. Oh, let's see. Maybe it's more of a purple feeling. So it's an analogous color. The more and more you draw, you will have things to pull from your memory bank. When you're first starting out, the first 3 or 4 years, you should really observe a picture, images, and then once those things become part of your memories, you'll be able to pull from them. Or you don't have to always look at an image. You'll be able to come up with your own sketches, and your intuitive, creative brain will just start taking over. And that's exciting when that happens. And then it's truly, uniquely all yours. So I have a plant over here. It's going to be interesting when I take that masking off, because that's going to be an opportunity to either add a different color, different shape. I've switched back to the rigger brush. A little bit more control because it won't hold much paint. There's a point way out here. If you need to be lining up, see I'm going a little crooked, just kind of point to your point. Remind yourself where it's at. You can see what I'm using here. I'm just pushing my rigger into the tiny little corners where it's a little bit more dried and there's less water. That has a lot of water in it, but this doesn't. and it's allowing me to just pick up little bits at a time. Remember, I'm still trying to go for an overall warm theme to my coloring. I'll just stick a little door in here. I saw that in this little design here. You may need to just squirt out some paint the night before and just let it dry so that you can do what I'm doing where it's not too wet for doing detail work. This is how you do it. You're really just using the pigment. It can still look painterly and watercolor in it if you want it to be more impressionistic rather than realism, even though we're just using pigment. Okay, I'm going to use just yellow now. Not the gray, so it looks more washed out toward the front. See, it's picking up the red underneath and making just these orange beaded boards. Oh, and this is going to be really washed out over here, so I don't want to show too much of it. I can put in a few weeds, even though I'm probably going to have a couple of bushes over there. Well, let's see. I did have kind of a big tree coming across the front and another evergreen right here that I might do eventually. And because that evergreen is going to cover over just about everything else, I didn't have to put it in right away. Be like a little miniature. Now, what if this field behind is growing something interesting, a little more defined? So maybe put some blue and my yellow together. A little red with that. looks like a new field that's already been turned over. And the dots get smaller further away. Usually between fields, if this guy doesn't own the same field but this one does, there'll be a row of trees or a fence line there. Take some of that and just splash it over here. I still have masking on under there. We didn't use a tractor right there, so we got a bunch of weeds growing right here. outline. Scratching in every so often. I mean, obviously there's masking under there, so. It'll be a little bit redder and bolder dirt toward the front. Okay. This is dry now. I can come back over here. Add another layer. Using a little bit of an orangey red now. Cleaning up some of these lines. And I'm probably gonna have some on the bottom here. Maybe just a suggestion of a few of the standing seams on the roof. Don't have to draw every line. Okay, but I want it to be a little darker over here on the edge. I'm still gonna have that tree going in. To remember that. Okay, let's get some dark under this eave. Kind of having to move around, just like with acrylic painting, I'm having to kind of move around the painting, waiting for other areas to dry before I do another layer over the top, especially when you're working in miniature. Because I don't want to have a big puddle of water on my brush and it goes right over what I didn't want it to go over. So I want to get this dark line underneath the masking before I take it off. I don't think I want these to go different. He ran out of lumber, so one had to go the other way. And I think I want the door to be open. So I'm going to make all of this darker. Using that rigor to make a little bushy, thorny plant here. Alright, I think I'm going to put some of that same deep dark, just getting into the crevices. I need a little water, it was too dried up. Oh, I got some spots. Layering the dark now over the top. Kind of nice to put some vegetation near your structures. What would it be without landscape if our houses didn't have all that? It just gives you that softscape against the hardness. Okay, I'm going to put some lines on my roof. I'm going to use the opposite of the reddy brown. Use a little bit of green. Just a few lines. Okay. Okay, the sun's coming from this side, so actually the little pebbles and rocks should be lining on the right side. Because the light's hitting this side of the road. Okay. Maybe use a little bit of that to put in a few rogue looking stalks. Maybe this is a cornfield. If you're doing a cityscape, it could be a row of cars in a parking lot. No water, just I'm hitting the edge of my pan and getting whatever little bit of pigments I can get out of there. Alright, I'm going to move back into here, I believe. Kind of do a little bit of separation. I made up just kind of a very light red violet that I could put kind of between my fields somewhat. It can be an applied line. Give them a little bit more definition. This one already has a white line, so it doesn't really need something else. This one needs something. You gotta kind of look around your artwork and see where it actually needs to be more defined. You know, if you left that implied line, you already left it kind of white, it may not need it. But maybe this is where just putting that really light red-violet shows more of a separation, covers up my graphite. And it's where the crops have not been turned over. Using my number 6. Put it at the base of some of these mountains. Remember, the light's coming from the right, so I could put it on the left side. Some of my graphite's a little too dark. I should have erased that. But I'll try to make it just part of the whole piece. Okay. I got a little post here for a outside patio. You're the designer. You could make up what kind of house do you have. Alright, I'm going to start to rub off all the masking and put on all the finishing touches. Okay, so I've rubbed all the masking off during the break, and now I'm going to start adding all the details. Here we go. Now it's going to be interesting to see what you choose in your choice of images, whether you're doing a cityscape or a countryscape like I'm doing. And it will be just as interesting to see how you do your miniatures. These could be like pools of water, you know, the fields have just been soaked. So I've got to add some interest over that stark white as to why it was there. Just kind of pulling some of those weed lines over that water. I love having masking. It makes creating opportunities that you never would have thought to do just by where the masking just happened to fall. It'd be fun to see too if some of you chose the same scenes you did before and you are now making them small. I had a big blob of masking right there. So I have an opportunity now to shape it up a little bit more. Maybe I put a little moss or something on it, you know? It's an opportunity to say, oh, over time something is sitting up there. Could be a tool. And I've just cleaned up the fact that it wasn't straight to begin with. Don't get too hung up with that. It's kind of the nice freeing thing about watercolor and art in general. You get to just play. Okay, so over here, at this field, we're just gonna kind of clean this up. Maybe the fascia board comes up high and there's just this other little lip here with some flashing. Flashing just keeps the rain out. So it's just an opportunity for me to put some other detail into the structure because my masking did something weird, right? Not all is lost. Clean that up right there. Clean it up on this side. How fun is that? You know, when you take the masking off and you get to have opportunities to create some doodads and stories, give it character. That's the journey I'm after, you know? I mean, I have an idea of what I'd like, but it doesn't necessarily have to end up that way. In fact, I don't think I've ever done two projects, same subject, and they look exactly the same. In fact, I know I haven't. I'm about to do a palm tree painting for the third time, and I know that will not look like the first two. Because those two don't look like each other. Okay. And I want it to be kind of aged there in the corner. Alright. Time to start adding those trees. So my dark brown is sitting over here. I'm gonna use my 1/2 inch, create a new brown, all the colors, a little bit of red, blue, some of the yellow, and I need some of the sienna. Get that deep dark brown I'm looking for. Needs more red, more pure red. That red got a little dirty over time. There we go. Okay, so I know I have a evergreen here. Look how I'm just taking that flat brush and just kind of, I'm not drawing a line, I'm just dabbing here. And I'm going to do the same thing here. I've got one side of that house. I also have one that's in the foreground here. And it's not an evergreen. So I'm going to make it a little bit more scraggly. Make some kind of Y's coming off of it. Okay, with evergreens, it's more of a zigzag, right? Some of this is kind of for if you took my landscape class. And if you haven't, we can do that again. I can reschedule that for the spring of 2021. Hard to even say that, isn't it? Alright, so I'm going to do a little zigzag. I mixed up a little, remember I want to try to keep this on the warm side, not cool. So that's kind of more of a warm green. Marching my way down here. It's behind the barn. Going at an angle on both sides of the trunk. This one's really tall back here because it's almost like the same length, but remember it's further away. I love how you can sometimes see the cedar trees marking the entrances to people's farms. Alright, I'm gonna just let that dry because you can tell it's trying to pick up what's behind it. Let's go ahead and work on some things back here. So I'm gonna have some trees lining the driveway and off to the side of this house. That's fun. And what am I gonna put there in the middle? Like some flower bed or bushy thing going on in the middle of the driveway. Some plants up near the house. Maybe they have a garden themselves near the house. What kind of driveway do I want?
It's a little dark because that's in the background. Make sure that you're working on how dark and light something is. The light's coming from over there, so there's going to be a shadow from this tree. I need it to be kind of a red, violet, purple shadow. Use it like a little carport, patio. Gotta keep it very muted back here. It's a little house way off in the woods. Using my bigger brush to mix up a little bit of purple. I don't have any. It's hard to mix that up with a rigger. Very little. And you can zigzag it if you've Got enough paint on there. I love color, so I'm going to continue to add color. I don't want this to compete with this field. There needs to be a little bit of separation, right? If I add a little violet, or I take away some of the color. Alright. This is going to be the dark side of the tree. Just using straight up blue because it's already got the brown underneath, so I just need to make that side darker. Gonna get darker. Or not. We'll have to make it darker. Still trying to keep it to the warm feeling. Scraggly little cedar tree of some sort in the foreground that I added. Can't wait to see what your journey through all of your countryside. Maybe it's all your English cottages, maybe you've got a series of castles in the Welsh country. I'm using blue, but look, when I put it right over the orange, it's becoming warmer. Alright, I'm going to switch back to my rigger brush and add in more. Needs to get more muted as it goes farther away from me, so I need to add some blue. Okay, now we're going to do a little in the vertical to emphasize our vertical orientation. for fun. So we can't just leave these things with nothing on them back here, even though they're far away. Excuse me. I don't have time to edit that out, so sorry about that. That's what I get for eating a snack while I'm working. All right, here we go. A little more dirtying up the fields. Just kind of a really light wash. I am barely mixing up whatever's just left here. Like there's some clouds overhead. That'd be cool, some clouds overhead. So maybe there needs to be a little bit more red in that. I'm using up every last little tray here. Little shadow coming across the sky above. Less is more, gotta kind of know when to stop on that. Keep it a little painterly there. Okay, there's my point right there. I don't know if I want to emphasize it, it's implied, but I do want to emphasize that there's a cute little house up here, so I'm going to just kind of give a little bit more definition to that road. And there's a cute little barn right here. Don't want you to miss it. Know how fun is this? You could just keep going and keep going. You kind of got to know when to stop when you've got a cute little scenery going here and you don't want to over engage. Let's pull the tape and let's just see if I like it. okay if it's got a little ripped from the tape because I can hide it. Here's my frame. You definitely want to frame your watercolors because they will go back to being just water with color if you don't take care of it. So there we go. Voila! Enjoy painting. See you next time.